minutes so that we start at 10:55.
You got it.
And we will go from there.
We're live, apparently.
Excellent. Welcome back. Shayna, good to see you. Anna, Sequoia, Paul, Amala, good to see you here. Jonathan, welcome back. Tatiana, welcome. Sean, good to see you there. Linda, Dylan, Carly. Excellent. And I think Haley just joined us. Yep. Welcome, Devin. Welcome, Haley. Dr. Zero, good morning. Wait, we got a pair back there. I saw another percussionist. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's my brother and my sister. We're having breakfast.
Oh, bon appetit.
Bon appetito, si.
Grazie.
Matthew, welcome. Good to see you. Aiden, welcome back. 23 now. And we have just ticked over to 10:54 and change. I will ramp up the introductions. Welcome back, everyone, both on the Zoom platform and streaming out over the Aaron Coppola School of Music YouTube channel as well. You join us for what is the sixth in a series, but what is part of a new pair of masterclasses with Professor Frank Morelli, joining us from Yale and Orpheus and the Copeland School and SUNY Stony Brook and 27,000 other places in a career that has encompassed everything from the band room to Carnegie Hall and back again. I had the great pleasure last academic year of listening to auditions at Copeland for incoming students. We were listening to admissions auditions. And I had to pinch myself a little bit because the very first time I ever knew who Frank Morelli was on a Deutsche Grammophon CD. And I flipped it over and went, who is playing the bassoon concerto? This is really cool. I got to remember that name. And so, it only took 3 decades later for me to sit next to my new colleague at the Copeland School of Music, listening to wind auditions. At any rate, the whole focus of an online music semester, and we were bouncing this around a little bit before we got started. We are, all of us, part of, for better or for worse, a cycle of activity in places where we don't normally have that cycle of activity. You're not used to taking your saxophone lesson, your bassoon lesson, your violin lesson, or your chamber music coaching from your living room, or your bedroom, or in front of your coat closet in the hall, or wherever you are able to do this. Those of you who are on campus and in the dorms, you know that access to the J rooms at school and to the practice rooms at school is under a very strict procedure. So I said, not 7 minutes ago, that I would never again take for granted meeting the same people in the same building on the same day at the same time ever again, because of its exceptional value to an applied music practice. Everyone who's on Zoom right now and everyone tuning in on YouTube has at one time or another been to the point where you have rehearsed something so bloody much you are going to get the last 4 notes of that cadenza if it kills you. And those last 4 notes of the cadenza, when you've reached that point, don't sound the way you want them to. Over practice, over prep, practicing something in too wide or too small a bracket is part of how many of us get through our applied practice. To be able to do this in a healthful way, to be able to know that the lyricism of your instrument depends on planning, depends on developing your ear, depends on how you listen to other musicians, singers, great instrumentalists, fantastic ensembles. All of these things make up foundational skills. And as we start our 6th meeting this morning with Professor Frank Morelli, wanted to remind you that these skills keep spinning forward to the next skill and the next skill and the next skill. They fortify one another. It's not a checklist that you draw a line through and move to the next thing. It's like a plant that you have to keep watering because it's going to foster the growth of the next thing. So welcome back, Frank Morelli. Good to see you again. Welcome to everyone on Zoom and to everyone on YouTube. It is 2 minutes of 11, and I will kick it off to my colleague. Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you, my dear colleague. And those auditions I remember very fondly because you and I both were giving just a little bit of instruction to students as they came through. And I very much appreciated, because you are a professional clarinetist as well as a conductor, a head of an orchestra program, a conducting teacher, all those things. At least that's how much I know. I'm sure you have other interesting talents and hobbies I haven't had the opportunity yet to know about. And I know you're a very fortunate man in marriage to have married someone who I know is very wonderful. But any event, it was really great to be together in that. And also after we had, while you didn't conduct the piece I played at the beginning of the semester, you were present for it, and of course
I did stick it in front of you.
Did stick it in front of me. Got me to learn a new piece, which was really a happy thing, the Augusta Reed Thomas Concertino. So we have had, at least in a brief time, a chance to collaborate, which is fantastic. And it's all about collaboration. And as Professor Powell was saying about us being in the same place, you know, the thing about music is it is an applied profession. There is theory involved, just like in any craft, where, like in a science, where there's the you might say the theory, which is what you're learning in the classroom for the most part, and then there's the practice, the application, which in the case of the sciences might be a lab, you know, and even something like computer lab, even if it's not a lab in a white coat and pouring things to see what you get to blow up in a
Exactly.
in a jar or something like that, but it's a lab. Or sequencing a genome. Those are the practical aspects of the theory. And so right now we are limited in certain ways in terms of our ability to be in the same place together in order to make music purely for the joy and love of making music and working on improving. And we're also limited just in that personal contact. It is a craft that has been handed down for centuries and centuries. It's wonderful. You can see even in our country, which is so much larger and diverse in terms of where people have come from. But if you look back, for instance, to France, and you can see the tree in Paris that starts, you know, at the beginning of the Paris Conservatory, when it was actually a revolutionary school before that and during the French Revolution. And you can see how the succession of flute teachers, bassoon teachers, oboe teachers, clarinet teachers, leads to this very day. They're clearly a bloodline that follows all the way through, and a tradition, a musical tradition. And it is, this is what we do, whether it's as obvious to see as that, where you could imagine, you know, Jean Cor, the bassoonist Jean Cor, handing off to the next person, and ultimately to Derain, and then Maurice Allard, and then to Adan, like say in the French school of playing to this very day. And the same is true in the flute, etc. So right now we have to pass this on the best way we can. And I've tried to develop these lectures to do just that. They are a stream of lectures that have a syllabus to them, an intention. We started with the basics of breathing. Then we talked about the vocal style, right? And now we're on to how to apply all of that to music. And before we get to the last two, which would be about actually playing behind the screen, playing auditions, what it takes to play in a way that is going to be successful in my years of experience, mostly on the juror side of the screen, but in my early days on the other side, the auditioner side of the screen. Before that, it's this: how do you get the last four notes? As Dr. Powell said, how do you get the last four notes? And the fact is, My argument is we've all played many things too many times. Too many times. And because of that, we are become immune to them. Or even a piece, you've been working on a piece in your lessons for a while, and you're going to do it on your jury, but maybe you get it ready like too early. You've gotten it too, and then you feel like you have to nurse this piece along until it's jury day or your recital. And in a way, the worst thing you can do is actually just to keep practicing it over and over again. And that's where I came up with this idea of deconstructing, how to take yourself out of something. How to take yourself out of it, how to deconstruct an excerpt into parts, and then work on those parts without playing the piece. And then just as a singer starts the day with ah, before they ever start to sing music, or a dancer starts at the bar and does a lot of exercises that he or she probably did as a little kid in ballet class, even if they're now professionals. And certainly athletes start out with stretching and swinging about with the ball on a tee, not even being thrown to them to perfect their swing. We have to do those same things and then breaking it down that way, and then we put it back together in the performance, whether it be athletic or musical. So I'm going to share the screen and get back to my cool slideshow. And just to remind you, this you saw last week, but how to improve your playing. So that's my point, that you've practiced too much. Okay, we want to break them down. What are the basic ideas? Let's say in general categories, the sound, which of course includes intonation, vibrato, and all that. Rhythm, articulation, and then relevant factors given the music in question. So there are general categories that everything has sound, everything should have intonation, everything should have the right notes, everything should have clarity of fingers and articulation, and ultimately interpretation, right? So all of these integral parts, many of them you might say are more scientific or mechanical, are with the goal of resulting in the artistic output, not just to be a machine. So in terms of sound, we talked about tone quality, intonation, vibrato. So one of the things, and the first person who will play in a little while is Sequoia Kessler, freshman bassoonist, wonderful young lady, a wonderful player. And she will be playing Shahrazad, the solo in Shahrazad. So how to work on that? The point is, and we will discuss that with her, but I'll get it started before we bring her on and listen to her excerpt. Shahrazad solo is very famous. It starts the second movement after a beautiful harp and violin cadenza solo, and then the bassoon comes in. And it's a magical moment, and as I pointed out in a class I did for the composers at Queens College, the Russian tradition, they figured out the bassoonist as a protagonist and its soulful qualities and comical qualities, the more obvious ones or more often described ones. I think it's more that the bassoonists are comedians than the instrument, speaking for myself. But the fact is, the instrument has all these qualities. And starting with Tchaikovsky, certainly, through to Rimsky, as I pointed out in my lecture, Stravinsky and Shostakovich as principal examples, each has taken the bassoon on as a protagonist and used it in the orchestra in a way that we heard some, certainly in Beethoven and Mozart, other composers from before, but they sort of tapped into the sort of profound, I think, human quality of it, and as a human voice, speaking the story, let's say, or the feelings involved. All right, so we're going to get to that. And Shahrazad solo is made up of 7 notes. It's the B minor scale without a high B. Now, therefore, if you're not in tune, just like a singer, if you're not in tune with a good sound and a good vibrato on those 7 notes, and it's not that difficult, certainly for an excellent young player like Sequoia, Shahrazad is not something, if someone said, could you play me the solo to Shahrazad? They're going to say, oh my God, I need a week to prepare that. No, you could, be like, oh my God, I have to take out my bassoon. That would be about as much effort as Sequoia would, and then so could Reed. But that would be about as much effort as Sequoia would need to just play it. The same is true for me. I've played it many, many times. Certainly practicing it, demonstrating it to students in performance. So, but for me to play it right, then it's not going through Scheherazade. It's being in tune with a good sound, with a good vibrato, and having an idea in my mind as how the solo is constructed and how I want it to go. And the fact is, and I don't mean this as bravado, because I mean it for also Sequoia. Sequoia and I should not need more than one time to get through it right. It has to be right the first time, because you have prepared yourself to be ready to do it. Don't use this music, especially that you've become numb to from countless iterations of it, to improve your playing. Improve your playing and play the excerpt. And the fact is, when you play auditions or in the orchestra, you get one time to do it. I had a buddy of mine, unfortunately is no longer with us, who played in Orpheus, and we'd be sitting next to each other and we'd try something and get it right, and he'd say, well, that's once in a row. And so, but when you play auditions or performances, you have to get it once in a row. And so to do it 4 or 5 times so, and then the 5th time, 6th time, whatever, to get it right, is not productive. And in fact, you are feeding into your subconscious the experience of not playing it well, along with playing it well. Okay, thus endeth the sermon. On to the next slide. Here's Scheherazade. There are 7 notes in this excerpt. There are 7 notes in this excerpt. Here's the cadenza. Also, Maestro Powell was talking about how to work out a cadenza. So there are different things. In this first excerpt, it's not so much technical once you're at the level of our young players at Queens College, for sure. It's not easy for a younger, like a newer student on the instrument. It has to be practiced. But it is, like I said, a piece that doesn't take, once you've learned it, a lot of time to warm back up on it, finger-wise, accuracy-wise. So here's the solo we're going to hear. And so we have a question of 7 notes from this high G down to the B on the staff. That's all the notes in Scheherazade. There's no high A. There are no accidentals. It is really a B minor scale, B natural minor scale without a high B. And that's it. So if you can't play the B minor scale in tune, don't play Scheherazade. Okay, so I think what we'll do next is I'm going to let me just do something here. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I unshared it. Sorry about that. I was trying to get myself to get this out of my way so I can get down here without wreaking further havoc, which of course didn't work. And let me get back. Ay. One moment, please. This is actually where I wanted to be. That's today's class. There's Mr. DePonio. I wanted to find Sequoia. There she is. Okay, sorry to keep you waiting. She had also furnished the music, but you have... Okay, so here's Sequoia's Scheherazade. Let me go back to the previous slide here with the solo, or a couple of slides earlier. There it is. And let me go. Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. I get a little bit flummoxed with all of this stuff. All right. I'm going to go back here for one moment because I'll get this started. So this is the Scheherazade as played by Sequoia. I'll go back to share this. Good job, Sequoia. Now, Sequoia, you're on there somewhere, right? Let's get you up front. There you are. Hello. Nice job. Now, for the moment, maybe I'm not going to share because I get too flummoxed with all trying to get all this stuff up. But if someone wants to share the solo, either Joseph or Mark, I'll put it in chat or something.
I have it downloaded already.
Fantastic. It's ahead of me as usual. It's good to have people around that know what they're doing. I wouldn't be one of them. Okay, so Sequoia, nice job. Good morning. So, how did you and I spoke about this. We had a lesson, so we worked on this a little bit in preparation for today, so this would be a good way of modeling this kind of practice. So what have you done since you and I spoke all the way 24 hours ago?
Well, I listened back to what you told me in the lesson, and I did some of your deconstruction things. A lot of intonation stuff because I found I'm generally a little flat in that range, so just a lot of support in trying to get the pitch up. And the decrescendo, like in the first two bars, what you said, one note. And then just trying to get the phrasing right.
Good. Excellent. Well, you did a good job. So, when you said intonation, how did you work on it?
I did the scale up and down, like you said, with the tuner. And then I think the tricky part for me was to have the pitch be right at different dynamic levels. So I did a lot of crescendo and decrescendoing with the tuner to make sure that was right in the loud parts and the soft parts.
Great. Did you practice using the tuner against the meter, or did you also do any like using a drone?
I tried the drone a couple of times. I think the tuner worked better for me, but I can try it again.
No, that's fine. I mean, but I recommend doing both. And if you can have either two devices, one playing a drone, and have the meter off to the side to check against, the other, I mean, we have two ways of using a tuner, basically, on the meter and on or to work on intonation, I should say, is on the meter to tell you sharp or flat, and using a drone. Now, for instance, I should have stock and tunable, considering I'm always talking about it. But like the app I use, Tunable, it's not by any means the only one, but the thing with Tunable is it tells you the pitch, and it has a fairly decent, which I showed in a previous, when we were talking about vibrato and intonation, it has a drone, and the drone sounds pretty good, because the problem with using a drone is, as many of you I'm sure have, even metronomes or tuners that will have an A on it or something, and it kind of goes, and I know for me personally, I have a hard time. My ear isn't that good that I can easily judge my intonation on it. And there are times when I'm unsure for myself. And so with the tunable, what I suggest is if you were to plug earphones, into your phone, if you're using your phone or your iPad or, well, it works on other, your electronic device. If you hook in earphones to that, I would suggest like you could have one earphone or earbud in, so you're hearing the drone over silently, you say, like not in the room, but into your ear, not too loud. And then you can, the tunable, for instance, will also at the same time register your pitch, the meter part. Thereby, I can hear the pitch up close, work on it, and if I'm unsure, I can look at the meter for assurance, or for improvement, to correct me. So if you felt, did you feel, for instance, when you did it that way, you weren't always sure if you were in tune, like you weren't sure if you had nailed it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why I suggest the perfect intervals, because with my ear, which is not the best ear in this household, I'll show you, is I am much better off double checking with the meter. Now, people will argue, well, I've had this nerdy people online that want to explain to me my business after 50 years. But, there's always something new to learn where I've discussed this and you have someone has to point out that we tempered a scale and an E in E major is different than an E in a C major chord, or an E that's in the seventh degree of an F major scale is different than the E in a C major chord. And I always write back, you should have such problems that you were that close already. The point is, get your instrument in tune with itself, and then you use your ear and your temper. So if you are playing a third, if you were playing C to E, you could argue, then look at the meter. If you're checking with the meter, it's okay if your arrow or whatever it's using to tell you sharp or flat is a little on the lower side of the middle of the beat of the pitch, because that's where a major third in a C major chord would likely be a little bit lower than some true pitch, mathematical pitch. Okay, but the point is, speaking for myself, it is essential I do that kind of work to be in tune. I do not have the kind of ear that I just lock in, and I don't. So I work on it, and that's probably one reason why it's become a mainstay in my teaching, is because I needed it myself. Sometimes if something comes to you so easily, you have to think twice about, well, how you would teach it to someone who doesn't hear it the way you do. And being a fellow sinner, I have a lot of experience, right? Okay, so in the case of the drone, well, all right, show me, if you don't mind, even using your meter, show me how you did a little bit of practicing with the meter. Play some notes. Now, one reason you were feeling a little flat is you have gone to a reed with a lot more resistance than you used to play. Because that bassoon doesn't play flat. It's a really nice instrument. And I registered Leitzinger. We play in the same kind of instrument. And, so part of it is you're just getting used to a new setup. And I appreciate you saying you were working using support and trying to resist the temptation to bite too much. And that's great. So show me how you did it, how you worked on it. That's all we want to see. Good. Now, remember one thing. Of course, we're hearing over Zoom and all that. You know, it's the foibles of Zoom, but it's we can hear you. And this is for everybody. And when we talked about intonation in an earlier lecture, I pointed out, be careful that you don't play with the tuner with tuner tone, I call it. Meaning, like, play through, and I know you're practicing also playing softly, so I appreciate that. So this is more for discussion than a criticism of what you did, but as a reminder, right? So it's not necessarily reacting to what I heard, but to give a chance for me to share with the class and with you the idea that we want to play with the kind of sound we would perform with. Would you say you were doing that, or were you doing a little bit of tuner tone?
I could definitely do more of that.
Okay, and that doesn't mean it's say louder. It means being into your sound, because you know you can have a beautiful sound in pianissimo or in fortissimo. So go for that, and that's such a common thing. I mean, I do it too. Like, you'd make the tuner happy, you know, and you're not committing, going for it, jump in, and then find out if you're in how you're doing, you know. So try it again, just a little more singing into the instrument. Okay. Now, what's really funny, because there's more highs in the sound now that you're ringing it more, even Zoom likes it better. You know, it's fun. Like, Zoom is getting sending a better signal too, as are you, of course. You're the one sending the signal, but you know what I mean. That already is a nice, beautiful, healthy sound and quite in tune. The B was a little higher than before. That's okay, because you were supporting into it a little bit more. So you adjust for that. Now, the actual way to do this, remember everybody, is if you start on a note, and that note is not in tune, the first note you play if the first note you play, or any note you play, has to be right before you can go on to the next note. But it's not enough to get it right and move on. You have to be able to get it right, move on to the next note, fix it, and go on. You have to be secure in how you get it. My bassoon's frozen, but hopefully I'll be somewhere in the pitch range. So I was a little flat at first, which doesn't surprise me. So I'm going to try it again. I have to be in tune before I move to the next note. C sharp's a little flat. Then I have to go back. So I can't just fix it. You don't do this, everyone in the audience. You don't go. You don't just find it and go on. The idea is find that new position and hopefully warm up your instrument first. But I'm now making, and the sun got in my ass. Like I said, I make excuses for why it's not working out. But the thing is, you're trying to relearn the position of the notes if they're off, not just fix it and move on. The good thing about the drone, and so I want you to work on it. We have to do it now, but I want you to work on it for our lessons. Is it's great ear training. And I've had students say to me, wow, I went and sat in the orchestra and I heard perfect fourths and I heard octaves and I heard fifths and I heard things that popped into my ear more quickly in terms of my relationship to them than they had before, because you just become more aware of it because you're hearing the pitch. It's very important also to work with only the meter as a check, not as a guide, but as a check, because we have to be able to be in tune with ourselves. And that is a major flaw often on auditions when you're playing by yourself. I'd like to think, well, my ear is not the strongest ear in the world. I'm a good ensemble player, and I'll find a pitch. And I enjoy doing that. Not that I'm Professor A and you just follow me. I'm at the bassoon's roll with clarinet or with the front line of the flute, of the winds, flute and oboe. Our job is often, I think of my job, for instance, in making a claroon sound, as I'm the bottom half of the clarinet sound, and even that middle circle, that brightness that I talk about in the earlier lecture, sort of the X-ray of a pitch. I would think in that case, the clarinet is more the middle circle and the bassoon being below the clarinet. I mean, occasionally we're reversed in orchestration, but that's extremely rare. So 99.9, probably even higher percent of the time, my pitch will be below the first clarinet. Let's say, if we're playing together, like in the Beethoven Septet, which I played just last night, live for people, not too many people, but live. Was like the most wonderful experience, as Dr. Powell said earlier, about not taking for granted being with other people. But I lock into the clarinet, so my sound is the bottom half of the claroon sound, So it's great for us to work on our pitch this way and to hear the drone. But you'll keep working on it. I certainly wasn't doing that regularly when I was your age, so I learned that with time that I needed it, and came up with the methods by which to improve it. Okay? Now, so. Good. So you practice that way. And even from yesterday, I can hear it became more secure. Now, play a few notes because your reed dried out. And I want you to play the first few measures of the excerpt. Just the first few measures. One other thing, unrelated, keep that left shoulder down. Keep your back, come on, tell that shoulder to get down there. Okay. Why? Because then you can use your lower back better for support, as you know. But I wanted to remind the class something else we talked about previously. Go ahead.
Oh, God. All right, I'm going to try that.
All right, play it. Just do it again. That's right. Don't worry about it. Just try again. Good. Now, what I want to show the class is one way to break this down. One way was vocalize on the notes, all 7 of them. Should be, so you got 7 notes. Now, secondly, the first entrance. Often we feel uncomfortable about the first note, the grace note, the G, and we focus too much on it. And one way I deconstruct it is I want you to play the second note, the F sharp, which is on the downbeat, with a decrescendo. I want you to go like that. Just go ahead. Nice. That's you getting there. Now, one reason for that, well, a number of reasons. One is just help with production. The other reason is at the beginning, those of you looking at the excerpt, now we're talking even about considering the style interpretation in terms of breaking it down. The first line, the notes are slurred together. When he repeats it, it's... So in the first half, you can't go... And often people do that. They let the vibrato get away on the last note. So what I'm talking about in this case is we've identified important notes, meaning right? And then when you go back, you add the, I always say, wiggle your fingers, but play just the same way. Right? So that was the purpose of that. So do the first few of those again and then try the opening line. I know that read is, not that we're looking for excuses, but that read is a little resistant and isn't wanting to be too, if we had time, I would fix a few slightly. But who made that stupid read anyway? Oh, I did. Never mind. That great read. It's an excellent, I meant to say great read. Great read. It's a fantastic read. Okay. So try those first, the exercise. The exercise. Now, the exercise. Dee, da, da. Nice. Now, play those notes in a line and just add the other notes in between. One line, don't back out in between the sections. That's okay. That was it. That was right, though. This time the notes really were together. Just do the same thing. Believe in it. You're doing it. Yeah, that was already better. So the point is, to play Shahrazad, to start Shahrazad on the bassoon, it's better to focus on the second note than the first, and thinking of the G as an appendage. Almost like the F sharp is the first note, obviously it's not, and the G goes to it instead of thinking I got to pick this G out of the air, which is a little scary. Right? The beginning of excerpts is often something hard. Now, the other thing about this excerpt, and I know it's up in the chat, if people look at that, I'm even downloading it from here myself, just to point out to you, it's very important. It's very important to remember that, well, this is a different version of it. It looks like it's correct. This is one of those.
I also uploaded the one from your slide.
Yeah, this is one of those. This is incorrect. Yeah. So, it's incorrect. That's all right. It's common. You have to be very careful. Another thing, dear students, try not to use excerpt books. And even though IMSLP is out there, be careful what you use. And check. Now, in Sequoia, to her credit, she has the old Stadio excerpt book, which is full of mistakes. But she was one step ahead of me when she said, because I mentioned that there, she says, well, I edited the excerpt in the Stadio book from the score, from the original part. And I was so proud of her. So she's right on top of it. So it's very important that you have the right info. Right? You have to have the right info. So if you notice on the first line, like I was saying, the first notes are tied together, correct? When you look at towards the end of the line, he then changes it. He puts a crescendo. Remember, and this is something to remember, especially by the time of Rimsky and even Tchaikovsky, and Beethoven. And before, I guess, when markings started to be put down, I've heard it described by the great Bob Levin, the harpsichordist, pianist, incredible intellect on virtually every subject under the sun, that composers write in the markings they don't expect that the player of their time would have put in. Because it is normal that I would go, because that's how it's written, it's on a downbeat. You're not going to go, it's abnormal. So later on, he says, now the second phrase, I want you to change it. I want you to accent the wrong note of the bar, a weak note. And even that, it's a sort of a hemiola, so it feels like a downbeat, but it's on the second beat. So there it's a little different. So, and then, here he goes. He accents going up the line here. Ba ba be da dee 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 da. Ba be ba da dee da. Second time, he ornaments what was here. Sorry, you're not seeing what I'm talking about. If you look at the second half, I'm not sharing, sorry. Those have accents. Now he answers the phrase like he did the first phrase. He changes the same notes a little bit, adds a little ornamentation. And this is why this version is correct. The crescendos in this bar, and there's no crescendo. There's no crescendo in. I mean, there's a crescendo there. This bar, there's no crescendo. Followed by a crescendo, and now this bar is, you might say, like a hemiola. It's two groups of three. You see? So we have to be you were a little less than careful about that. But the main thing with Shahrazad, in terms of you're working on it, is what you're working on. This idea of getting the sound together, getting the intonation together, ultimately the vibrato together, working on those notes at the very beginning to give you the security about it. The rest of it you play really well already, and those are the things to look out for. So the point of today, we not getting through the whole thing, but with your help, which I really appreciate, showing students about the idea of breaking it down in terms of the pitches that are in the excerpt, finding the sound, and then doing my exercise, which we talked about yesterday, of playing, like, say, the center note, the kingpin note, right? So Rimsky from Tchaikovsky, and like the class I did for the Queen's Composers a week or so ago, they were starting to write very specifically in their parts, in their music, what they wanted. And we want to do that not just because we want to honor the wishes of the composer, but in terms of auditions, it shows the listeners, like if it's an orchestra job, that you are attentive. But the trick is not just put an accent, there's an accent, whack, hit an accent. You didn't do that, but I'm saying we don't want to do that. You want to integrate those markings into an aesthetic style, into a musical interpretation. So you're saying, I understand the style, the composer has made these markings, and I'm integrating them into an interpretation that has integrity, right? And if you play that way, you can't lose. You can't. Not in time. In one audition, and in our business, you have to remember, no accounting for taste. Some people like Pepsi, some like Coke, That's how it goes. That we know. But they're both bestsellers, so to speak, right? So I'm going to move on for now, but Sequoia, thanks for recording it. Thanks for being my test case and helping me show how to go about it. And great job. Thank you. She's just a freshman. We have some wonderful, I've said this before, wonderful new students. We have wonderful students that have already been here, but it's so exciting to have a wonderful new oboist and flutist and bassoonist. We have, the future is bright in the wind department at the Queen's College. Thanks to you, Sequoia. All right, I'm going to share the screen and show you something else, and then we're going to move on to Kerry. And that is... This has to do, we'll go back to, as far as working on technique goes, let's talk about it. The Shahrazad Cadenzas, there they are. They're a little trickier for the bassoon. Sequoia can play them great. But one way to deconstruct excerpts or any line is to take parts of that line and then practice them in different patterns. Like the cadenza, the one that you see, the first one here, right? I'm sharing now, right? That's right. So you actually can see what I'm talking about. Sorry, I get a little loose track sometimes. But anyway, I'm just doing it quickly. So here you would practice. Let me show you how you would practice it. The trick of if you break your fingering down into, maybe let's see. So if you break the fingering down, and you could be looking even at the page with the original excerpt on it that's been shared, you might do, many of you probably know the uneven way of doing it, like, it happens to be in 3, or you even can go that way, breaking it down. Then and you could do the opposite. You could do that. And I find that when you do that snappy, more like dotted 8/16, 16th, uneven way back and forth, it helps you learn the notes, but it also is a way of working on finger discipline and strength because of the snap. Then there's the more mental attitude, and that is breaking it down into other meters, other downbeats. And when you practice this way, you don't have to go fast, but you have to really indicate the downbeat, like with an ugh. Like, all right, so the original, that's too fast. And the point of this, too, in terms of avoiding overuse, is you don't have to play these over and over again up to tempo. Play them slowly and accurately, and you will get the benefit, and you won't be wearing out your fingers. That's the original. As you can see, it says original. How original. Now, here's a change in the meter. So you really accent the wrong note, you might say, then. And then, and this one, I guess I'm going to go a little faster for the 4s. Like that, and then. Now, the reason I wrote them out, and these are pretty short, the reason I wrote these out was more, this is part of materials I give to my students, provide for my students, was to give the example. For longer things, which I didn't write out here, I didn't include in today's presentation, longer excerpts, it's really important for my brain to put them out because, to write them out, because I'll lose track of them. Like, see, I can do this with my bassoon on my leg, but. The Ravel G major piano concerto. If I tried to play that and go, that's. If I tried to go. By about the 3rd beat, my brain would just blow up. I would lose track of the new way that I'm trying to play it in terms of what notes on the downbeat. So in that case, I write them out. They're written out. Dr. Corwin has been the beneficiary of that particular exercise. And I encourage you to write out the longer ones, especially, because it's very hard to keep track, from my brain anyway. So, all right, that's working on technique. That's one way of working on aspects of technique. Then, and then style, I wanted to show you here, sorry, it's a rather fuzzy, I just took a picture of this. Here's the rite of spring for bassoon. Another thing, like this, you could work on the rite of spring and just get the notes. You could see it, not a lot of notes. This is out of my excerpt book, the Stravinsky Difficult Passages, published by Boozy and Hawkes. But in any event, you can see there are not that many notes that are different. So rite of spring would benefit, as does the Shahrazad, by doing that. Now, I just wanted to do this, and then I'll share it right away again. The way I deconstruct this one in a way, even though this is actually playing it in time, but a way of practicing it is, and I'll put it back up. Mr. Stravinsky was very clear in his writing, taking even the writing of Rimsky-Korsakov and bringing it further along about his act being accurate about what he wrote in the score. So Stravinsky, although people think of it as a cadenza, in its own paradoxical way, you get the perfect rubato if you played exactly in tempo. That's how skillful Stravinsky's notation was. So here I'm going to see if I can do the quick razzle-dazzle. This was a recording of me. I just ran it through once with a metronome on to show the composing students at Queens College. There could be maybe a slight, although that accelerando is more for the clarinets, but I'm playing with a metronome. So there's an example of how, by deconstructing it in terms of establishing the proper beat pattern for it. So when I go to play the piece, especially back in the day of doing an audition, instead of thinking right as spring, I think I hear that beat and I start to play. That's the way you do it. So now I'm gonna get out of this. I think this is the last one, right? Yeah. So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to work with Kerry. Thank you again, Sequoia. So Kerry, I saw you had some Mozart there, and I think maybe that would be a nice thing for us to work on. So I don't hear from Kerry, but are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Great. Excellent. So I'll go back to my inbox, and I know Carrie is here somewhere. There you are. So if we could see you had a part out of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto and a recording of it. And I saw you actually recorded sort of a breakdown of you practicing it. So how did you practice it? And then we'll put...
Yeah, actually similar to what Sequoia did with the tuner and long tones. In my video, though, I don't think it's as good as, I feel like I did it better off camera than when I was on camera, but yeah.
Well, we could try it, if you want, we could try it right now on right here. Do you have your clarinet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good. We could try it right now.
Okay.
But it was nice of Carrie, just while you're getting ready, that to say to the class, Carrie had sent a recording of her practicing the intonation part and then a recording of the opening phrases of the Mozart Concerto, right? Yeah. I thought that might be, it's a little more, goes with this whole excerpts that you've played too many times.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's why I thought I'll pick that one instead of the other. But the Osborne is great, which also, as you know, exists in a bassoon version.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I know that.
Yeah. So anyway, have you played a few notes? Do you want to play a couple, or are you pretty warmed and ready to go?
I should be okay.
Good. So show me. All you have to do is show us how you did it. Remember, class, as a teacher, from my perspective, you have to know how to do something right. Let's say have a bar, a sense of what you're trying to accomplish, the level you're trying to get to, how to do it correctly, then what to practice and how to practice it. If I arm you with those things, you cannot fail if you apply them. The application part is not my job. And with young professionals, I don't think of myself as, your mother or father telling you to clean up your room. You're a professional, and it's your job. So I don't use threats or that kind of thing when it comes to that. You have to be motivated to practice. This is not at you, Carrie. This is just saying as a general thought, so don't take it personal. Right? So show us how you worked on the intonation things you chose. So this is, well, for you in the key of C, for us in the key of A, right? You're playing it on an A clarinet.
I'm playing on a B flat.
Oh,
clarinet.
my goodness.
So, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right, just for the class, many of you know this, but the Mozart Clarinet Concerto was written actually for like a kind of a basset clarinet that people have tried to reconstruct, which is a lot of fun. But you can play it on the A and the B flat clarinet. There's no doubt about that. Not having played the clarinet, my clarinet, one of the two clarinets I ever played on was a metal clarinet. It's now a lamp here in this room. That was my fourth grade instrument, was a metal clarinet. And then I was a doubler, not a good one. I mean, barely a doubler. I didn't play a lot of instruments, but I have an old buffet sitting in the closet that I used to use when I did my limited amount of work on Broadway, where people were foolish enough to ask me to also play a clarinet. Believe me, not a pretty sight, I assure you, or a sound for that matter. But anyway, so I don't know enough about clarinet to remember. I know throat tones, but that's So we're thinking about sound. So play us the opening. Play us the way you worked on warming up, deconstructing this excerpt.
Okay.
Excellent. Good pitch. Now, the trick is ultimately you don't want to watch it all the time. Mm-hmm. I always say it's like if you follow, for me especially because I have a bad memory for directions, if I follow the GPS to get somewhere, I have no idea how I got there. I was just following. Make a left, make a right, make a left, get to right. You missed that. Recalculating, you idiot. Make a left, make a right, make a U-turn. But so we ultimately you want to hear it and then look at the tuner, close your eyes and then open or just look away, however you want to do that. That'll make it better. And were you tonguing each one?
Yeah.
All right. I suggest when you first, I thought you were, but, again, we have the Zoom stuff. It's better first not to tongue, only so that you can focus on really getting into the sound with a proper voicing of the note. Mm-hmm. And then build on that by tonguing. And that was from an earlier, you were probably there for it, attended it, but you could always go back to it. That would have been the first, I think the first, well, now I'm not sure. I think it might have been the first of the episodes, the pilot episode. But anyway, you can go back and review that if you wanted to. So try it again. Would you try it again? And do not tongue. Nice. That's really nicely in tune and a nice ring on every note going through the kind of the middle of the instrument. I think that has some nice consistent quality to it. Now, what if you played like an arpeggio, like an A major arpeggio? Well, concert A major, which means you're in B?
This movement's in concert D. So it's E major for me.
E major.
Yeah.
Didn't anyone tell you that clarinet players don't like sharp keys? We like flat keys, but Sue plays with clarinet players. No, that's fine. I'm just teasing you. Even the piece itself, the instrument was an A, so that's what Mozart wrote it in. But and then Schumann had to write the romances in A, right? we would have been happier in B flat, I think, right? Because I stole them a long time ago, and I'm not sorry I did. But I would rather they weren't in the key of A. But that's the way it is, so we have to make the best of it. Remember, class, all the great wind writing, like the serenades and things, Mozart, Beethoven, it's in flat keys. E flat major, C minor, B flat major. Those are and the two piano quintets, two great pieces, E flat. Of course, Beethoven was writing in a way homage to Mozart. But it's not a coincidence that these wind pieces are in flat keys. That's, So, but in any event, that's fine. And it sounds good what you're doing. Good job. Instead of using your recording, although I appreciate you went through the trouble to do it, maybe we'll hear, did you work on it in other ways, or principally using this? I should say this first, ask you this first.
It was mostly just the intonation.
Well, I'm telling you, that's one of the big things about this excerpt, about every excerpt. And I mean, first of all, just for playing, not thinking auditions and all of that part of our business, which is a reality. We want to play in tune. Great players play in tune. Although some play a little sharp, and the old joke about something soloists, it's better to be sharp than out of tune. But that's a side story. But we want to play in tune. We want to play in rhythm. We want to play all those things. So that we are judged as good musicians. But the main goal is to make music, so I don't mean to become too mercenary about it or, scientific about it. Right? So why don't you play us the opening?
Okay.
And then we'll talk about it. Nice. Actually, that was nice. And that was really in tune. And that's step one. Oh, that is, a major step. Now, another way to practice it is, in terms of intonation, although that was quite good, but to use it as an example, is so we can play individual notes, like you did a scale, or you could play it in thirds. I mean, there for any number of patterns you might use, chords that show up in it, in the piece or in the actual solo. One could practice those for intonation and sound. Of course, clarinets, usually some people do, but you don't use a lot of vibrato, so you're not worried about finding, the vibrato aspect of it. Then, in terms of working on it, although you did a good job already, in order to deconstruct it, like to continue to work on it, but put it more in the context of the piece, would be you would play through the notes without worrying about rhythm and really singing from note to note and checking for the intonation, but not thinking that you're being distracted, so to speak, or challenged, which it is. Everything you add on is a challenge, a good challenge, but a challenge, by interpretation or speed. So you could, da da dee dee da da. I mean, just a silly example, but an example. But that's not because I didn't think you played well in the first phrase. That's more to share with you another thinking about how to develop this idea further as you work on it. Right? How about the second phrase? Good for you. Are you looking at the tuner, or are you just playing in tune?
No, I'm not looking at it.
Wow. That really was quite beautifully done. And you're playing really well in tune. You're playing really well in tune. What did you find? You know the answer I want you to give me, but just being honest, did you find working on it this way helped?
I did, yeah.
And what
really
did you
unfortunate.
notice in terms of your own tendencies? What things, like what messages did you get any sort of unifying truisms, ideas as, based upon having done this work?
Yeah, so I tend to play sharp normally, so that's something I have to think about a lot.
Right. And so, but we'll say what physically, I mean, that's important. I mean, that's a great answer, and I want to know your answer, and also to share it with the class. Is there anything beyond that? Or just you thought, don't play sharp? I mean, no, I don't mean that to be silly. I'm silly sometimes. But were you thinking, be more open or do this or do that? Was there anything, a general, just curious if you had one, not that you have to make one up, just curious.
Yeah, actually, some like air support is something that I've had to really work on as a
Good.
clarinetist. And I think recently it's gotten a lot better, from what it was before. But yeah, definitely support is something that I'm still working on.
Good. So if you were supporting, you probably have to also remind yourself to remain open, because the support, if you were tight before, would bring you even higher in pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I mean to say is, in this practice, even though you're working on ostensibly a specific excerpt, you can apply it to your playing. I do that. I mean, again, this is not geared to say this, students are supposed to do this, young people do this. That's professionals do this, and you're a young professional. So that's what you do. Yeah. Just like I try, although I'm not a young professional, I'm an aged professional. But,
I think you mean experienced and mature.
I'm inexperienced. Well, mature, I wouldn't say. You could ask Dr. Corwin that, but experienced and aged are two that would fit.
You hit on something really, really singular to this environment, though, and it's the attention that you can pay to the most minute details while you're playing. I mean, yes, we're coaching back and forth on Zoom, and you're playing with your colleagues, and you're making recordings, and you're sending them in. But the idea of environment is a huge consideration now, and so we've been in this situation now for months, and to take advantage of that. And I'm doing this because I'm trying to physicalize the idea that the most minute detail. And as Professor Morelli said earlier, not to get to the pitch and then adjust, but to know where it is in a sequence, to know where it is in a chord or a scale or a passage. The attention you pay to where your tongue sits, or where the mallet is in your hand, or the bow pressure between your thumb and your pinky, all of that is... we have an opportunity now to put that at the very front of our brain for anything you care to practice. And it was just nice to hear that in the context of this. I'll go away now, but I thought it was important to put just.
No,
to
I
draw a line
appreciate
under that.
I appreciate that you added that. I think, I mean, first of all, I totally agree with you. So, ta-da! But that is the point. And when I'm just like I said, as a teacher, whether it be in this seminar, masterclass type situation, even over Zoom, or if we were together in a lesson, although, Carrie, you wouldn't want me to teach you the clarinet, not based on my experience on the clarinet, using the term loosely. The fact is, so I talked about how we want to, and I'm sharing this philosophy too, because hopefully some of the music education majors are listening. You want to try to help students of any age know how to do it right, what to practice, and how to practice it. Actually, little kids, it's a different story. You want them just to play and love it, and you fix things as you go along. We just want them to have a joyful experience and to learn how to do things well, and to learn goal setting and problem solving and self-discipline and all of those things that come with the study of any discipline, including music. But so what I'd add to this amendment is then how to practice it, and then remembering to apply it in more a global sense. So my goal in working with you, Carrie, is to say to you, yes, now take this and use it. And the thing is, the more you do, when you first work on this sort of, say, intonation stuff, it may feel a little bit frustrating the first time you look at it that way, right? You think, oh goodness, I didn't realize. When I first got a tuner, by the way, which when the personal ones first got affordable, 45 years ago, thereabouts, and I got my big cork tuner, which I still own, big gray thing with a dial, and you had to set it to one note at a time. It did not find what pitch you were on. So if you wanted to practice a C, you put a dial to C, and then you played C, then you wanted another note. You had to change. And so that's one reason I got into the drone, was because you could practice more than one note off the drone versus the meter. But the point is that by getting this a system going for what things I'd have to do in order to bring my pitch into line will help you throughout the range of the instrument. And if you first start doing it and it feels a little frustrating, I think you probably found after you did it a few times, it got easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does. It gets easier. So we have to fight that immediate frustration of thinking. And like I said, when I first got a tuner, and I was like in my mid-20s, hot shot out of Juilliard, taking auditions, and I turned that tuner on, and I thought to myself, I'm really bad. I really suck. I'm out of like, it was staggering to have to come up against the fact of how imperfect my playing was. But then I kind of, took a deep breath. Okay, no time to panic, and got myself going and benefited from it. And now we have so many great these apps, compared to, though the one I had, it still works, and it's a nice old machine with a good sound for listening for pitch. Against it, we have so many, these tools have become so hypersensitive to us and malleable, the way you can use them has become really useful, even more useful, I should say. And for you, it's always been tuners like that, tuner in your clarinet case, maybe even in high school. Mm-hmm. We had, the only tuner we had was the old Kahn Strobo tuner in the band room, and you could go and play into it, right? The big yellow thing with the dials going around, which is a really cool machine to this day. I'd love to have one just to have one. But things have changed. So that was beautiful what you did. I encourage you to keep going, because the way in which the excellence in which you played that in tune with a nice sound is really should be really encouraging to you.
It is.
Yes. and no, I mean, so take the ball and run with it.
Yeah.
Seriously, take the ball and run with it. And I'm really glad. I think Emily sort of helped kind of suggest you might play today. Is that true?
Yes,
I'm glad she did. I'm glad she did. And thank you, Emily, for being a cheerleader, and for your friend as well as for our class. And I'm glad you played for me, for us.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Do you have any questions about it?
I don't think so. I think I get what you're saying, and I definitely am going to look back at the other lectures, and especially with like articulation and the support, I'm definitely going to look back at those.
Right. And as you work on the intonation, when you add the tonguing, the articulation is to tonguing, the tongue, as I always say, the tongue by definition gets in the way. That's its job. So the reason you practice without tonguing, just like a singer without articulating words or syllables, is to first establish where your good sound is. That's why I asked you, like not to tongue it. Then you could, and if you want to put it in one of my Morelli kind of silly ways, you have to tongue without screwing that up. You have to learn how to articulate the note without losing that nice pitch and sound, and to do it with a light articulation, right? Easier said than done, right? It is for me. I'm still working on it. I'm making progress, but I'm still working on it. So you have to do the same. And it's a good work. It's not bad work. It's good work. And work is a good thing. Working towards something to be excellent at it is a noble effort, right? And a rewarding effort. So keep it up, because that sounds very good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to Sequoia and to Carrie for playing for us today. Thank you to everyone for listening. Any questions from anybody in the house? Anyone, feel free to chime in if you want. Maybe just open your mic and ask. once again, the perfection of my teaching has left people speechless. Either that or catatonic, which I wouldn't blame them for. One or the other.
I wouldn't say catatonic at all.
All right. Now, here's the deal. Please, a few people volunteer to play next week. Right? And then the last two lectures or opportunities are going to be really practicing how to play excerpts properly for auditions, especially behind the screen or on an audio recording in terms of quality of sound. But a little spoiler alert, it's everything we've been working on since the first class through next week's class. So my goal was to arm you with information. Much of it you've already heard from your excellent teachers now or in the past, so I don't claim to be the first person to ever tell you any of this stuff, but to hopefully maybe put it into sort of a continuum that might help, and just to hear it from another person's point of view. That all of what we've been working on, you might say the final project, all of them have been important projects, and the final project is playing some excerpts. But that'll be the week after next. Next week is a continuation of this class, and I would really hope that 2 or 3 people at least would want to play. Otherwise, I'll recruit some, but the students I know the best are the ones that are in my rep class. I'm glad Kerry played, who is not. So I've never met Kerry before, and it's wonderful to hear you play. I'd love to work with the students in my rep class, but it would be great to hear some brass players. Mr. Jolly even gave me the okay that I could say things to you I won't get in trouble with him. Plus, I'd always say, do what he tells you. If I say something else, do what he told you. But so I'd hope maybe a brass player or two might want to play next week and in the final 2 weeks. For that matter, string players, but that's up to you. So I guess we can call it a day.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed. Great to be with you as always, Frank Morelli, whether online or in the building. Please
We have a building? We have a building?
We've got it. No one's seen it for months, but I understand we have one.
And we have a building.
And we have a building.
I'm impressed, personally.
Email Joe DePonio or myself with the excerpts that you would like to play. I see faces now. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Ramirez. Dylan, I look forward to hearing from you. Everybody. Haley, outside and enjoying. Love it. Thank you all very much. We will see you back here on Zoom in a week. The recordings that we make here are broadcast live on the YouTube channel for the Aaron Copland School of Music. We also archive them, and they are phenomenal resources to go back and use, particularly in the context of your own practice. So unless there are any questions, I will bid you all a fantastic rest of your Monday, and we will see you soon. Thank you for joining us.
And I'll see my little class this afternoon. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.